Okay, so I wanted to do a quick video here, 'cause I was sitting here, I got tired of coding for a bit, so I decided to start thinking about um, how my database is going to work, how the user objects are going to, um, be used by the game object, and how run game inside my code is going to essentially communicate with the game server, and then like once a game is finished um, and complete, and all the XP and stats are calculated and whatnot, the game server will resend those user objects back to the DB. But I kind of just wanted to highlight something here because on my second slide you can kind of preview it's a little bit more complex. I wanted to kind of highlight that it's okay to kind of start off super basic. I was just kind of getting my thoughts down, just thinking about, okay, what's the database going to do? That's going to drive the user objects. Then run game is kind of taking in the user objects and some other stuff, communicating with the game server, sending it back. So you can kind of take things slow, and then I kind of started going crazy with it. And yeah, so I have my database over here and the game server over here. I'm not totally sure, but I imagine this will be, through the Steam. Um, whatever Steam offers for their multiplayer services. So I'm gonna assume that there's some integration there that I'll have to learn. But yeah, the game server will be sitting out somewhere on a Steam server, and my database will be probably sitting somewhere on like an AWS cloud server somewhere. So I'm thinking that's probably the best way to go. Doing something like that gives me some flexibility, a little bit more control, a little bit more maintenance. Not so much because it'll be sitting on a cloud server. It's not like I have to spin up my own. Um, but yeah, I'll maintain my own cloud server and my own database. That way I can kind of modify things as I want to. Yeah, so I'll kind of take you through this. So I'll look at the kind of top channel here. This kind of top part here is its own thing. I imagine you have sort of two clients here. So at some point the game will get packaged up into some type of executable. It'll have some local files. So you can imagine this block here just as like a user on their computer. This is the user's game like executable on their machine. So there'll be some local files that the game actually needs to run the game, along with some database connection stuff that the game will require to spin up. So when you click start on the game, that's essentially what this block is here. Um, so yeah, you click start on the game, user object gets created, and then at some point you hit play game, a game object gets created, run game gets called on the game object and communicates with the game server, and comes back, and then can communicate with the the game instance. The game instance is communicating with the kind of the local memory, and then sending stuff back to the database as needed. There's not really too much there, honestly. Not really too much needs to get sent back to the database. I really just imagine at the end of like a game, the game will want to end and send back, if a player leveled up or something of that nature. So sending information like that back to the game server so that like a user's, yeah. So essentially, the biggest thing for the database will be keeping track of user information. So when a user signs up to play the game, they'll get like an account and a profile with a bunch of stuff that they can track. So we'll want to be able to update that after they complete a game. So yeah, so kind of abstract it out into what like a user will actually be doing. So they'll launch the game. So that's kind of why I have this bar here. Like this is kind of connected to over here. So user kind of launches the game. I guess I should have something like uh, and I'll straighten that out later. But yeah, so user launches the game here. They can either register or log in, so they can go either way. And then if they register, then they need to sign up and write to the database, and then they'll need to come back, log in, read from the database, grab that information, um, and then go and either play the game, go home and then click play, run game, and then that's what this connection is here for. So run game, game object, and then back through the loop there. So that's kind of what I was thinking for this. Obviously, I don't know if this is necessarily perfectly thought out, obviously. This is kind of my thoughts as they were coming to me. I'm thinking about how that stuff is going to have to work, since I'm kind of rolling my own everything here. Obviously, I have, the Steam servers and multiplayer integration there, so that I'm not rolling my own anything there. Definitely not doing anything network related, but yeah, I mean, I imagine I'll have to do some of that stuff to communicate with the game server, and we'll figure that out when we get there. But in its, I guess, simplest form, this is kind of the overview. The big guy here is run game, so that's going to be doing a lot of the communicating here. Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to make a short video on that. Not even really sure how far we are on it. Yeah, only 6 minutes in, but yeah, so I just wanted to do a short video as like a supplement to my last video, where I was kind of, I think at the end of it, at the end of the video, I kind of talked about, some possible database integration stuff. So I might get that going and start doing this stuff. So we'll see how that goes. Real quick, one other thing that I forgot to mention as I was kind of thinking through this. So, one thing that I'll have to think about in the future is kind of these local files. Um, so, kind of trying to balance at some point, deciding what the game should pull in from the database and what the game should pull in from local files. So, that might not sound like a big issue right now, and it's not necessarily an issue really, but it's more of like an optimization thing down the line. But so imagine I have the game, these are simulating two users here. Um, Imagine I have the game here, and each user has their own set of local files. So that, let's say at first that includes something like the map layout, or the characters available to the user when they load up the game. So if those are local files, that's fine until I need to roll out a change, and maybe a change needs to be made to one of the characters, or maybe I want to add a new character or something like that. So trying to kind of balance what goes in the local files and what goes in the database files, what goes on the database. And thinking about like startup time. So, it's not a big deal if the game is pulling, a table with, maybe 20 rows full of character, attributes and stuff like that. So that's not really a big deal at all. But yeah, trying to think about that stuff and do it early so that I can build upon it. Um, yeah, and then if I weren't to include something like that in the database, then I would need to roll out an update to the user. So trying to minimize the amount of updates that the user has to actually install. So if I have everything sitting on the database, I could also update things live. So if if I want a new character to go live in a month or something, I can insert, essentially just insert that row into the characters the character table, um, at any point, or in this case I can insert that row in a month, and that character will show up for the user. Um, Now, also thinking about stuff like, you wouldn't just want to, insert a new character into the game and not tell anybody. So you'd have to think about baking in something into your code that, handles some type of event for like a new character launch or something like that. So you kind of have to prep for those things. But if you can prep for them and think about that down the line, then you can include some. I imagine you could probably include some pretty cool features in your database, um, and how that's architected, and kind of figure out, how you can optimize things in the future. But you don't want the game pulling anything too large on startup from the database, because you want the game to start up nice and quick. And if it's just pulling on the file I/O, then it doesn't have to communicate with the database. Um, Also, that makes me think about an offline mode for the game, right? So like, what information do you absolutely need to be able to run the game, right? If you're pulling just like user information from this, and a handful of other things that aren't, that wouldn't matter if they were gone. So like, if if the local files had all, the map information and the character information, then you could run the game in offline mode. So, maybe doing something like, and that's another thing to think about in the future. Maybe baking in the characters into the database, but caching them in some local files so that the user can have them for like an offline mode or just even a quick startup. And then the only time they need to reach out to the database is when a new character is dropped essentially. So yeah, thinking about those things and thinking about how I would kind of integrate that into the code to handle it. That was kind of another thing I wanted to mention. And yeah, so anyway, thanks. See ya. Okay, so I wanted to provide a quick update here. Also, I know I just tried to end the video there, but I think what I'm going to do for these from now on is just kind of as I'm working on things and as they pop up, I'm just going to talk about them instead of trying to consolidate a bunch of updates into one long video. I'd rather just kind of talk talk through things as they come up. So yeah, I just did a little bit more research and I didn't even get very far, but I realized Steam is not going to provide these dedicated servers. So it's actually going to be all on me to deal with everything server related. Steam will provide the API into the Steam like user uh, access so that like Steam users can play the game and install the game and run it there. But and they'll host my game install, I suppose. But yeah, they're not gonna run the servers for me. So yeah, not too much research figured that out. So yeah, I'll just have both of those on a cloud server somewhere. I'll figure something out there. That's not really my main concern. That'll be a little bit further down the line, but also that shouldn't be too big of a deal. Just kind of um, get a database, a dedicated server for a database, and then some dedicated servers for the game. And I kind of started thinking through how that's going to go. So I'll kind of talk about this stuff up here later, but real quick about the game servers. So the game servers, I was thinking about this as they'll essentially act as kind of remote players. They don't actually get a player object or anything that like spawns them into the game. Nothing UI related. There won't even really be there won't even be a UI for the game server code, the server side code. Um, there won't even be a UI for it. It'll just run in the terminal. So those game servers, as they're running, they'll have their own set of features that's sort of available to them. And I was thinking of things that would be relevant to that. So like they can start game lobbies. They can connect users to excuse me. They can connect users to the same lobby instance. So so that users can play together. They can create game objects and map objects and stuff like that, anything related to the game needed for that. And then they can execute run game. So there's run game again. We kind of always go back to run game as kind of the main thing that the big guy, he's the one we kind of talk about a lot. So then these objects can't really um, they don't have to be like interacting with anything like I said UI related or really I guess they'll be interacting with the game object itself, but they're not really interacting with anything physical in a sense. So they'll just kind of communicate with the game server and the client. So it's just the server client relationship there. Um, so that's really all that is. And then yeah, like I said, everything can be done in the command line. I was thinking about things like initializing the server instance, some type of function, and I get down to this here, but this was my initial thoughts. So this is kind of like my thought process going through it. Some type of like function running that's like I'm ready to accept users into the game and be able to start a game, something like that. So yeah, I was thinking the logic would kind of look like this. So essentially, the server would have would have the game installed, and it would have a set of privileges. I guess I'm kind of thinking of it that way, where it can do this. So it can run. It can call this method, and obviously this would be abstracted out greatly into it would be a whole thing of its own. But yeah, while running, I was just kind of like I said, pseudocode, just figuring out what this might look like. Verify, make sure as soon as this server is stood up and the game's installed on it and the code's run, you want to check everything, I guess. Make sure everything's good to go. You want to create a game lobby. Then you want to basically say, hey, I'm ready to accept users, and then once the maximum number of players are reached in that game lobby, you'll create the game object. You'll I guess begin the game countdown, and then you'll call run game. So there's run game again, and then if the game's over, so that'll be handled inside run game mostly. So run game is still kind of, even though it's just a little piece to this whole thing, that this is still a whole beast of its own. So once the game has concluded, so it'll always be checking if the game's over. We'll send whatever data we need back to our database. So that's obviously just going to be sitting on another cloud server somewhere. So we'll send data back to our database, make sure we store that, and then we'll get rid of everybody from the game lobby, and then we'll delete the game object, and kind of restart the game lobby back to scratch, and then we might not even need to do that because we're just going to call run anyway and create a new game lobby. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. So like I wrote down here, that's kind of irrelevant now. Um, but I guess we can do AWS. So I'm assuming, and I don't, this is where I don't know too much. I don't do much like cloud database work, but I'm assuming um, AWS will have something where I can have multiple instances running, and host, one server can host many game lobbies. I'm not sure what that number looks like, but that's definitely to do. That's something that I got to figure out. Yeah, and then stuff in multiple locations. Yeah, but basically just the main thing. I don't really need to worry about this for now. The main thing is kind of figuring out um, how many users a single server can support. So that's kind of going to be a big question. And once I have that figured out, I can maybe even start playing around. Like even if I really wanted to, I could kind of create this on the game server. I could spin up an AWS instance, and I could kind of already start to mock up this code. So maybe I actually will do that here in the near future, but probably not uh, quite just yet. So yeah, as you can see, I'm kind of hopping around with a bunch of things in this video, and that's kind of how I think these episodes are going to go. I think I'm just kind of going to talk about whatever I'm working on, especially because I'm hopping around so much. It's kind of hard to think back sometimes and try and remember exactly what I was doing at the time. When I'm going through. So even though I've only made one video, when I was trying to make this one, I was trying to go back through all the kind of all the updates I've been making and working on, and it was kind of hard to remember exactly what I included in the last video, and all the little things that I iterate on when I'm hopping back and forth, because I was kind of jumping around between some database stuff here obviously, and then some UI stuff earlier in the video and whatnot, and then that whole diagram. Uh, so yeah, I think I'm just kind of gonna do it that way. Yeah, so I'll just keep going until the next segment, I guess.